So, AI is completely shaking up education, right? We hear all these amazing promises about personalized learning. But there's this other side to it, this huge fear of cheating. And it's kicked off this, this arms race of AI detection tools. So, in this explainer, we're going to dig into a really important question. Are these tools, the ones that are supposed to protect academic integrity, actually doing way more harm than good?
Okay, picture this. You've just spent weeks on a huge paper, you poured everything into it, you're proud of it, and then you get that email. You know the one. Some cold, automated message that says your work has been flagged as AI-generated. All of a sudden, the burden of proof is on you to prove that your own thoughts are actually yours. It's a total nightmare, and honestly, it's a scenario that's becoming way too common for students everywhere.
And this whole situation really gets to the core of the problem. Look, the goal is totally understandable, right? Of course we want to make sure students are actually learning and developing their own skills. But the method we've landed on, just blindly relying on these automated AI detectors, well, it's creating this massive disconnect. It makes you wonder, are these tools even helping us reach that goal in the first place?
All right, so here's how we're going to tackle this today. We'll start with the AI detection dilemma and, why these tools just don't work. Then we'll get into the hidden costs of banning AI. And after that, we'll pivot to a much more constructive approach, thinking about design instead of just control.
So think back to when generative AI just exploded everywhere. The first reaction from a lot of schools, a lot of universities, it was basically a panic move. Just lock everything down. They rushed to implement bans, they poured money into AI detection software, and what that did was create this whole culture of surveillance, basically trying to play gotcha with students. But here's the massive problem, the critical issue. What if the very foundation of that whole approach is just broken? Because when you look at the evidence, it's pretty clear. These detection systems are seriously flawed. They produce outcomes that you just can't and shouldn't trust. And when we say flawed, we're not being vague here. The failures are really specific. We're talking about high rates of false positives. Literally accusing innocent students of cheating. And get this, if you take the same piece of writing and run it through different detectors, say turn it in AI and then GPT-0, you'll get completely different answers. There's zero consistency. And maybe worst of all, there's no transparent evidence for how they're even making these calls. It's a total black box.
Which brings us to this really stark conclusion from the source material. It says these tools are, and I'm quoting here, unsuitable for any process that demands technical rigor. Just let that sink in for a second. We're making these huge, high-stakes decisions about a student's future, their academic career, based on tools that are fundamentally not rigorous enough for the job.
Okay, so the tech is unreliable. But the problems, they actually go way deeper than just faulty software. The very fact that these zero AI policies exist, well, they come with all these hidden costs that really start to warp the whole point of education. And here's the really crucial point. When the main goal of an assignment shifts from learn something to don't get caught by the AI detector, what do you think happens? Students stop focusing on deep thinking, on wrestling with complex ideas. Instead, the whole thing becomes a game of tweaking your sentences, swapping out words, just trying to sound more human for the algorithm. Real learning gets pushed aside for just evasion. And you've got to realize these fear-based rules, they don't hit everyone the same way. Multilingual students, for example, whose writing styles might not fit a standard mold, they get unfairly flagged all the time. The same thing happens to neurodivergent students. This kind of environment just crushes intellectual risk-taking. And it can even lead to absurd situations where a student gets punished for using a simple AI grammar checker, something totally harmless, and it's treated like serious academic misconduct. All right, so if the whole policing thing is a bust, then what's the alternative? Well, this is where we can start talking about a much more constructive approach. It's really about a fundamental shift in mindset, away from trying to catch students and towards actually teaching them, moving from policing to pedagogy. And one really interesting idea that comes up is this model called the Constructive AI Usage Grid. Now, this isn't about a simple thumbs up or thumbs down on AI. It's way more nuanced. It's a framework that helps you think about how AI is being used. And it judges that use based on three key things. What was the student's intent? Were they transparent about it? And critically, how much of their own brain power was still in the driver's seat? Okay, let's actually walk through this grid because it's pretty smart. So down in that bottom left quadrant, if you're not being transparent and there's low cognitive engagement, literally just copying and pasting an essay, that's obviously unacceptable. But now look at the bottom right. If you are being transparent about using it for a simple task like a grammar check, totally acceptable. Now, the top right, that's the sweet spot. That's where you're transparently using AI for high-level thinking, like as a brainstorming partner to bounce ideas off of. That's the kind of use we should actually be encouraging our students to explore. And what this all boils down to is a simple but really powerful idea. Having open conversations and setting clear expectations about what good AI use looks like is just so much better for learning than a culture of surveillance could ever hope to be.
So what's the big takeaway here? If you remember one thing, it should be this. It's all about a huge shift in our mindset. We need to move away from trying to control what students do and move towards intentionally designing better ways for them to learn.
Let me put it even more plainly. We have to stop writing rules that are based on fear and start designing assignments that are based on purpose. The entire conversation needs to change from how do we catch them to how do we actually help them learn.
So, what does that new path forward look like? Well, it's really 3 steps. Step 1, we all just have to admit that the detection tools are unreliable. They just are. Step 2, we need to see that fear-based rules don't support thinking. They actually get in the way of it. And finally, step 3, educators have to start designing tasks where using AI is transparent and actually helps achieve the purpose of the assignment. Because at the end of the day, the solution isn't a better game of cat and mouse. It's not about finding some magical detector that's 10% more accurate. The real solution, it's just more thoughtful, more creative, and more human-centered educational design. It's as simple and as complicated as that.
And that leaves us with one last really big question to chew on. What if we've been framing this whole problem the wrong way? What if the goal isn't to stop students from using AI to write an essay, but instead to design assignments where a generic AI-generated essay would be completely, totally, and utterly irrelevant?